We get it. You're busy. You want to grow, and we want to help. You're passionate about your craft because it deeply matters to you. Your faith is important. It's your foundation. At Stay Forth, we coach leaders to avoid burnout, live and lead with clarity, purpose, and from a place of health. We want you to experience long-term impact. Welcome to the journey.
Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of Stay Forth Leadership Podcast. Jonathan here with, you always say to me, main man Alan Briggs. We are celebrating the fruits of a busy season and a busy week that seemed like it was a year long, Alan. So, man, glad to be here with you.
We are a week out from launching this beautiful book, AntiBurnout, A Lighter Way to Live and Lead in a Heavy World. And man, it's been a great week, honestly. You say it's been like a year. I feel like the seeds are already landing in this, and there's a lot of excitement around here. And I'm getting your pictures as you send me. I'm getting your thoughts. Quote, a few of you have already been through the book in this first week, which is mind-blowing, and I'm so grateful that you would pick it up in your already busy lives. So yes, it has been a week, and we're looking at really introing the next section of the book here in a little bit. So grateful for you, by the way, Jonathan, all the work you did getting out here. I've said that before, you've emailed that out. But I just think to say here on the podcast, we work in team, and although these ideas have come from coaching conversations, they can't get out to the world without team. So anybody that thinks you write a book by yourself is a fool or has never written a book because it takes a team, and you've been a significant piece of that. So dude, fun to have you on and have a conversation today.
Man, I appreciate that. Thank you. I mean, I love what we do. I love sort of my sweet spot, my lane within everything that we do. And I think it's nice to sort of be able to live that out, and people get to see that. So thanks for letting me be a part of it, man.
Yeah, and getting on this side of the mic is fun too. So we're going to change up this series. I'm not just doing the talking head piece, and we are going to have excerpts at the end. So I know you're listening or watching over on YouTube, and you're saying, well, I don't know. I don't know if it's worth $15.99. I don't know if it's worth one of my Audible credits. I don't know if it's worth a Kindle download. I don't know if it's worth my time. I have 6 books ahead of it. We understand. I'm always reading a lot. But friends, I would beckon you to at least consider it and listen to some sections here at the very end to kind of give you a sample. So I don't know about you, but when I go to Costco, there's so many foods, but you give me a sample and I'm like, yup, that's it. So hopefully that's the case. I wouldn't have written it if I didn't think it was worth your time or money. I absolutely do. And I'd rather you wait on it, even get to the end of this series and examine it and actually order some for your team. So we have before we get going on part 2, I wanted to give a quick offer again to timestamp this. Last episode actually said it was 2023. So apparently I don't know what year it is. So you said it's felt like a year, Jonathan. It has been an actual year. So we timestamped this.
You time traveled.
As mid-April 2024. And so here we are in the midst of this. But what we're saying is for the next 2 weeks, if you see this and purchase before May 1st, what I'm doing is wanting to get into team rooms through Zoom, living rooms, men's groups, women's groups, business groups, teams, offsites, retreats. If you order either 12 or 25, I'll go in with your team. You order a dozen of these bad boys and distribute them to whoever you want or leave them on your shelf. I hope you don't, but distribute them to other people. I'll come in for a Q&A via Zoom wherever you're at. We can schedule it anytime later. It doesn't matter. You just have to buy in April. 25, and I'll deliver a free keynote to your team, conference, online thing, whatever it is, because guys, I want to get this message into teams. So that's just a quick kind of cool opportunity that we've come up with. All you got to do is forward us your receipt at hello@stayforth.com. So that's my last ad, but seriously, I'd love to meet your team.
Yeah, it's awesome. I just want to say this. You mentioned if you're on the fence, you're wondering if it's worth it. I can tell you, watch or listen to the end of the series, watch the YouTube shorts, but I can tell you this, burnout will cost you a lot more than $15.99.
That's the truest statement I've heard in a long time.
And if you're wondering, then you should probably pick up the book and read it. And if you don't resonate with it, pass it on to someone you know, because you could be taking your healthiest next step to avoid experiencing burnout or someone else.
part of the book I talk about, actually one thing that burns people out is selling things that they don't believe in, which is essentially going against your soul, even going against integrity, galvanizing something you don't believe in. And so to me, like, I have invested years into this, sessions into this, and I'm like, how can we create the best coaching invitation and resource we can for $15.99? And so to me, it's a no-brainer. I think you should buy it for you and your friends. In that, I actually have a money-back guarantee in the book as well. If it's not worth 2 Chipotle burritos, go ahead and email us. We'll Venmo you the money back. That's how serious I am about this. And I talk about moving from selling to invitation. So honestly, guys, this is an invitation into this message that I've seen heal and change and reorient a whole lot of leaders. So that's all. I'm super pumped. You better cut me off, Jonathan, so we can actually talk about content.
It's deeply personal to me. And so today we're diving into part 2 of the book and part 2 of our series on anti-burnout, and we're looking at obstacles and opportunities. I did want to take a second and just share, the whole book is deeply personal to me. I mean, for a number of reasons. I resonate with both sides of the coin, with why it matters to pursue health, and then what happens when sort of health falls to the wayside, and those ramifications and how those ripples go far and wide. So 2 of the ones that really stuck out to me were pain and connection. The obstacle being pain and the opportunity being connection. I think that's never been truer in our current culture. And it's really personal to me because, I mean, we talked about this. We collectively and individually work in a world where we're around people, but we're disconnected. And so it can be easy to feel like, sort of those pains of leadership and, some of those things, they hurt you. And you can feel isolated, you can feel lonely, and I can attest, got a great therapist, I've got mentors, and I've got friends, but you've got to have a solid friend circle. You've got to have that relational connection.
Especially as a leader. Like a leader, guys, you're trying to do a hard thing, and it can feel like a Freaks Like Me club. And there's a power dynamic too. And so just because you are leading people does not mean you are in friendship with people. Now, I hope you are friendly and you have, connections on your team, but it's really important to say you need people who aren't impacted by your leadership for their paycheck. And that power dynamic is really challenging. We need people outside of the struggle. We were talking about this yesterday, Jonathan, people who get us, people who understand what entrepreneurship is like, or what ministry is like, or what nonprofit work's like, or trying to raise $5 million is like. Like, that is a huge challenge. I've never raised $5 million. I don't know what that feels like, but you need somebody around you who does.
Yeah, it's someone even not doing the exact thing you're doing, but something similar, because they'll just naturally understand some of the hurdles that you're facing every day. The other one for me, personally, the obstacle being exhaustion, the opportunity being replenishment. I think it doesn't matter who you are, we can pursue the opportunity of replenishment more than we do. And those opportunities for replenishment, even when we invest in them, they become temporary. We don't work them in as disciplines, and we end up finding ourselves more exhausted than we realize, and then very quickly heading into some murky waters. So that was another one that's really personal for me.
Thanks for sharing those. And my experience, there are 8 of these that we're going to share today, and we're going to flip the script on all 8 of these. And of those, just like Jonathan, probably 2 of those are going to resonate with you the most. And some of the book, you're going to go, yeah, I'm doing really well in this. Some of them, like, these are problem areas, almost like red, yellow, and green. Green, man, doing great, need to keep doing it. Yellow, I need to pay attention to this. Red, like, here are 2 that if I do not pay attention to these soon, they're going to impact more areas of my life. So just know that that's normal. Not every word in this book is, going to be awe-inspiring to you or, oh my gosh, but a few things are within the book. That's the goal.
Mm-hmm. No, I think it's great. I mean, you have written something that I think every page flip, something in the book, one thing will stick out to someone and be like, oh, wow, it was definitely worth 2 Chipotle burritos to get this nugget of wisdom. So,
and I've battled through all this stuff too. So I share plenty of those moments and people who've actually made the shift.
Real people, real leaders, real wins, real celebrations, real struggles. It's all, it's practical. And we're in the trenches too. So, all right, man, let's dive in. Obstacles and opportunities for the climb.
All right, so this is part 2. And what I want to do is give you an overview of this. And here is the reality. The greatest obstacles you face as a leader can lead to the greatest opportunities you will have. Let me say that again. The greatest obstacles you have as a leader, and even just as a human, as a dad, as a mom, as a friend, as somebody experiencing life and pain and change, the obstacles if stewarded well, lead their way to an opportunity naturally. The question is not whether there's an opportunity on the other side. The question is, are we resilient enough? Are we going to push through this to the other side? Do we believe that this is worth fighting for? Is there hope in our bones for this? And so what I'm not trying to do is to say this is easy, but what I am trying to do is say, friend, this is possible. And I've watched people battle through these. I've experienced the other side of these, and I want freedom for you there. So let me do just a very quick overview right here. The obstacle of overwhelm, the opportunity of clarity. Okay, so the obstacle of overwhelm. When you feel overwhelmed, the opposite of underwhelmed, when you feel like there is too much to do, too much to think about, too much to process, too much to get to, too many emails to, whatever that is, too much of something to do, the challenge right there is that you can't think clearly. But I want you to move toward clarity. And we have this inverse relationship we talk about at Stay Forth. And we say that when clarity goes up, overwhelm goes down. You'll see in the book, there's a diagram of a pulley. And in coaching, I'm seeking to pull some clarity up. And naturally, the overwhelm goes down. 2%, that creates a 4% gain. And so it doesn't mean certainty. It doesn't mean you have the answer you need. It means something became clear. I just got out of a coaching session, and this guy feels stuck in several areas. What we did was clarify even fears and lies and challenges and hard things. It didn't change that those things are hard. It changed that he had clarity. Clarity goes up, overwhelm goes down. The second one, the obstacle is stuckness and the opportunity is newness. We need new thinking and new questions and new paradigms and new actions to move through. And if you are feeling stuck, you need newness. Maybe you're feeling stuck inside of your rhythm and routine this time of year. And you think it has been a long winter and it feels like it still is. I have been stuck inside of something. You need freshness. And talk about 5 new things that we all need. And they kind of dislodge something. Is this idea that movement creates energy. And if you're stuck inside something, what you don't need is to spiral and continue to overthink. To move into a new future is going to require these 5 things that I talk about within this section. The next one, the obstacle of exhaustion, the opportunity of replenishment. Exhaustion does not mean you just need to stop, and it isn't even just rest. It's literally to replenish that which was lost, to plenish the thing, to make plenty the thing that was lost. And so as Jonathan and I have conversations, you could be exhausted in one area of your life, maybe socially, but not vocationally. You could be exhausted physically because you have a little baby, but you don't feel exhausted emotionally. You could feel exhausted emotionally because you're carrying a lot of other people's pain, but not feel exhausted physically because you're on a good workout plan. So I hope that makes sense, that there are lots of dimensions to us, but whatever has been depleted needs to be replenished. And we actually talk about some great habits later in the book that I call $10 investments with $10,000 returns. Wait for that here on week 4 of the podcast. The next one, the obstacle of change, the opportunity of experimentation. I think we need to cover this later here in the podcast, Jonathan, and kind of dive deeper on it. But whenever there is change, and guys, that's right now, as change is really high. When we think about technology, changes in the world right now, changes in the economy, lots of job and vocation change and how we do work over the last several years, change is high. And what we need to do are run experiments or prototypes where we test out the future without pressurizing it. What you don't need to do is take some massive shift in your life. You may need to prototype something, try something without putting the pressure on you fully, on your life, or on that next thing. Experimentation is a beautiful invitation to try some things, see what happens, take notes along the way. And some people would say fail fast. I would say more experiment and prototype quickly, learn from it, and act accordingly. Next one, the obstacle is pain and the opportunity is connection. This was probably the hardest section of the book for me to write because I thought about my own pain and I had to call BS on myself that frankly, seasons that I thought, oh, I did well in that season or I was fine. No, I wasn't. There was freshness above the surface, excitement above the surface, and below the surface, there was pain. And when there is pain, We need connection. We are wired for connection. Sometimes just talking to a friend and dumping our problems or issues and saying, sorry, I just need a vent, actually makes us feel better, even though it doesn't change how hard things may be right now. When you are in pain, you need connection. My kids understand that. People around me understand that. I hope that we create an environment for that, for our coaching clients at Stay Forth and for our team at Stay Forth. So pain is an invitation into connection. Next one, the obstacle is disappointment. The opportunity is naming. Friends, if you are experiencing disappointment, then you are experiencing unmet expectations. The challenge is maybe those expectations were named. Maybe they weren't named until you didn't hit them. If you're disappointed in yourself, you're disappointed in the options you have, disappointed in what you accomplished, how you showed up, how somebody else did, you've got to name that gap. So again, it's disappointment leading to naming. When you can name something, also clarifying it here, we name the gap. What did I hope for? And what did I get? Man, that's helpful. Instead of, I'm so frustrated or disappointed at myself or this person. The next one, the obstacle is resistance. The opportunity is movement. In his book, The War of Art, Stephen Pressfield beautifully talks about this idea of resistance. We all feel it, right? Like, you want to do anything healthy. You want to do anything good for you. You want to take any ground in the future, you will feel resistance internally and externally. It is part of the human experience. And if you're feeling that, you're normal. That is resistance. Again, it is part of shaping the future, and there's all kinds of things attached to that. But it's one of those things, friends, we're going on a bear hunt. You can't go over it. You can't go under it. You got to go through it. You have to go through resistance. It is harder to build the thing the first time than it is the next time. I would say it never gets perfect. It never gets clean, and it never gets easy, but it does get easier. There is less resistance once you build the thing. Acting on the future. The last obstacle is cynicism, and the last opportunity is curiosity. Cynicism right now is an epidemic in our culture. It is this quiet, cancerous, under the surface challenge that leaders have that we maybe don't even know that we're carrying. In fact, we did a whole podcast episode on this. That cynicism below the surface is killing us. And in fact, friends, it's chipping away at the hope that we have underneath our leadership, underneath the thing that we're doing, the initiative we want to launch. If you want to bring change in the world, friend, starting as a cynical leader is not the place. We need to move instead to curiosity. That is the opportunity. Are you curious about what could be? What if? What's next? If we did this, then we could see that. Jonathan, that may be the fastest overview I could ever do of those. But underneath it all, friends, just here, there is an obstacle. It's real. It's a challenge. We're not trying to pretend it's not there. But when we push through it, when we can name, here's what it is, we can actually move through it to see a more healthy, mature, resilient, I dare I say, grounded and effective leader on the other side of that.
And a lot of these are, almost all of them are interconnected. So if you're talking about feeling exhausted or in needing connection, and so simply having a 10-minute conversation with a trusted friend can have an immediate effect of reducing your overwhelm, giving you some healing, some replenishment, and the clarity you need to face the thing that's been burdening you.
Yeah, and they all play on one another, and it's like there's an anchor area for you. And for each person, and maybe even in each season, I know that there have been seasons where I let myself get worn down physically, and I was pushing too hard. And so when I started to replenish, I watched other things come up naturally. So when I'm tired, I can get cynical because I can get worn down. And so for me, that's a huge one. And there's different ones we all need to focus on. And so I can head towards cynicism because I work with leaders that often are working inside of broken and challenged systems.
And let's camp there for a minute with cynicism.
Let's do it.
Sometimes cynicism is not, it's seen as just being as negativity, the other side of positivity. And cynicism is way more than that. There's a misnomer there. So what are some of the misnomers with cynicism?
Yeah, it's something I can fix easily. I just need to be positive. It's complex. We have to acknowledge that it's a loss of hope. It's not just, I should be positive about this. It's hard fought. Cynicism is incredibly hard fought. It's not just, let me flip this switch. I think one of the misnomers is that alone, I can just go against this. This is where the community piece comes in again. Connection with other people is so important, because if I think I'm the only one dealing with this, then I'm going to get cynical. It's like, oh, it's just me. It's always going to be this way, which is probably the biggest misnomer of cynicism, is it's always going to be this way. And Dr. Henry Cloud talks about it's pervasive. It's every area of my life is falling apart. And so there's a negative lens on that. It's always going to be this way, and it's in every area of life.
And that's the curiosity piece. And it's almost a worldview shift. Instead of looking at the world through what might be to, oh, what might be, what could happen if, or, in spite of blank, this might happen, to, oh, well, this is as good as it's ever going to be.
Well, one of my favorite questions is, what if it works?
Yeah.
Because the negative stories we tell ourselves are almost always, 99% of the time, it not working out. But it's like, well, what if it works? Well, what if it actually has the impact that you hope for? What if it has greater than the impact you hope for? And I'm working with leaders who are pushing change in the world, who need to raise lots of money, who need to start new things, who need to recruit teams, friends. The way forward is curiosity. What if we could do it this way? By the way, curiosity is an amazing way to get around limits. That limitation breeds innovation. If you think, nope, we don't have enough funding, nope, don't have enough team, nope, we have a small team, which, by the way, we've always had a small team and we've always had a small budget here at Stay Forth. And we have had to work around problems. Have we been able to accomplish everything we wanted to? Of course not. But we have been able to do, even around this book, to take a unique approach, to be able to do things, whether it's better or faster or easier. And it starts with, what if this were possible? What if we could? And so, not to say we're perfect in that, but I think we've modeled that well, that what if piece, instead of, well, I'm sure there's not blank or blank. Friends, if you have that ultimate statement, whoa, turn that into a question. What if? What would have to be true? In order to blank, what if we blank? And something tends to just pop up.
Mm-hmm. No, it's true. I mean, I would agree with that. I think we live in the lane of excellence, and looking at curiosity, like strategic curiosity with a high level of excellence, with asking what if. And we've shifted timelines for pursuing things so that when it's the right time, but it's always this what if, and like, okay, how do we do this with the highest level of excellence, which is utilizing the resources we have at our disposal right now, so that what we deliver to the public is, 10x what we put into it.
Perfection's going to snuff that out too. And excellence versus perfection. Our definition in Stay Forth of excellence is doing the best we can with the resources we have at this moment. So if you had more resources 2 years from now, you could do better, of course, but that's not what excellence is. And perfection is going to snuff this out, because of course we're cynical, and of course we're going to be stuck. And of course, probably I would say perfection mindset is probably going to touch 5 or 6 of these, because resistance, if you're going for perfect, you ain't going to start. That is so important to that excellence mindset, mixed with the abundance of there's more out there than we've seen, as opposed to, nope, I'm limited, it's shut off, scarcity mentality, boom, that'll kill this. You're not even going to see an opportunity if we're living cynical.
No, I mean, you become so narrow-minded. Not when blinders are on, you think like this is all it can ever be, and you find yourself walking a tightrope, and then you're anxious, overwhelmed, resentful, frustrated, and then everything. Then you've created a self-fulfilling prophecy, so to speak, of everything's fallen off the rails because you've boxed yourself into this one little lane to tiptoe across. And at any given moment, anything's going to go wrong. And in that scenario, it will. So you have to think outside of that. So we were talking about wanting to dive into change and experimentation. I want to read something, and then we're going to camp here, because you open this section in kind of a very, very vulnerable way. And I'm just going to read it for the listeners. And then I just want us to dive in and camp here. You say, I was curled up in a fetal ball under a weighted blanket. It was 5:30 p.m. and I had barely survived the workday. It felt like I had 300 pounds pushing down on my chest. I had never experienced something like this before. What's happening? Is this a panic attack? Something was very wrong, and I'll leave it there.
That was a painful moment for me. And from that moment, I understood it's possible and even probable that with change, there's excitement about the future. And there is fear and even anxiety about the future and what we are losing. What was happening in that moment, I was right at the cusp of becoming a full-time coach. And just to be clear, guys, I'm living my dream job here. I love what I get to do. And yet, I was leaving some things that I needed to grieve. I had been a pastor before, and I'd been an entrepreneur before, and I'd had time frames that were open and, frankly, a schedule that I loved and very supportive people around me. And I knew it's like the body keeps the score, and the body was keeping the score that, friend, you're going to lose a lot. And my body was trying to tell me that. And I had not experienced something like that before. Literally, my daughter's weighted blanket that she's used for, anxiety and, kind of calming herself. It was like, what is happening? I should be so excited heading into this. But the reality is, below the surface of change was a great deal of fear and pain. What am I going to lose? And I say this in the book, I wish I had somebody that could just take me by the shoulders and say, Alan, you're going to lose a lot, but it's going to be worth it. And I promise you, if I could have been naming that and looking back and say, I may lose this, or this, then it would have been way easier than just trying to pretend that I was just excited. And so I think just to invite you, and both things can be true in so many areas. There's a tension within this book. And the reason that I started with that moment is because I think that we don't talk about anxiety as leaders or overwhelm enough. We don't talk about those things. It's becoming more common now, which I'm grateful for. But if I can just start in that moment to say, I was at the edge of having my dream job, and I was experiencing perhaps a panic attack the only time I ever have. And that's not an accident. Both of those live in that tension. And it was like my chest was pulled with that tension. And so again, I don't share any gnarly stories within the book, but to me, those little ones, I just hope that can produce a little bit of conversation. And if that's been, part of your journey and story, that's not been a huge part of mine, but in that moment, both of those things can be true. And I don't regret any of it, ever taking this jump. I do not, but it has been freaking hard. And that was a really hard start to it too.
It was a very vulnerable realization of the quote, change yields loss before it yields opportunity. And so, I mean, in that moment, you're living it out. I've had panic and anxiety attacks before, and they're not fun. And so I just want to say thank you. Like it's a topic that people need to hear, and you're writing from a place of, hey, I experienced this. And I want you to know that, the obstacle of healthy life and leadership is change, but the opportunity is experimentation. So let's dive in there just a little bit as we, sort of wind down. Why are experiments helpful?
Yeah, the design element underneath this book is so important here. The design is about form or beauty and function or practicality. And those kind of pull tight together. And I believe good design has both of those. And so I believe we are invited to co-design our lives with God who created us. We are designers in that. And I think that is a beautiful invitation for us. And too many people feel stuck inside their own lives because they're not designing that. And many times feel stuck inside of the life that they created. I think about the irony, which has happened to me, it's happened to you, it's happened to all of us. So we felt stuck at times inside of the routines, the life, the mindsets that we ourselves created. And so we are the ones many times that have pushed those expectations or limitations on ourselves. One of the definitions of burnout is voluntary self-exploitation. Think about that. Voluntary self-exploitation. That it's not somebody else telling us you need to work 80 hours a week. You need to be on your computer at all times so you can never miss an email. Nobody will be disappointed with you. No boss is ever going to tell you that. I hope not. But we may tell ourselves that. And voluntarily, we've exploited ourselves trying to make sure that we do everything perfectly and never disappoint anybody else. And so those are the below the surface things. But when we look above the surface to experiment, there's a freedom to fail. Nobody's telling me not to fail on anything small. And by the way, what seems like a failure to me, somebody's like, that's not a failure. You were just trying something. We're so hard on ourselves. So experiments or prototypes are beautiful. We've done them here at Stay Forth, and we've had some stuff that was good, worked for a season, and then we moved on to something else. We've had things that immediately did not work. We've had things that should have worked on paper. The idea was sound, and I don't know why they didn't work. But I'm so thankful that we get second chances and third chances and fourth chances. Here's the reality. when we experiment, we will find our way to open and close doors. Every experiment in my life, without exception, has closed doors and said, oh, that's helpful for clarity, and has opened new doors on the other side, and has made me more resilient, maybe even more curious in the meantime. Experiments are vital. And maybe the last one for us to just touch on here is Overwhelm. That's probably maybe a third of the book. Jonathan, could be called an experiment in Overwhelm, and at least an invitation to it. Why? Well, anxiety, I don't want to confuse, I'm not a therapist, and I don't want to confuse chronic anxiety, acute anxiety, and things that therapists would talk about here. Again, I'm not a therapist, but I believe in good therapy. And so what we talk about is overwhelm, this feeling that people tell me every single week, 10, 15, 20 times, I am overwhelmed. And we know this. So the opposite, again, is underwhelm, maybe underliving our lives and our capacity. Going short, playing small, calling it in early. And then the opposite of that is doing so much, overextending ourselves that we are overwhelmed. The question is, how do we get whelmed? What does whelmed look like for you? Living at your capacity. And we all have a different capacity, and we just need to name that. That I can run really hard in certain areas and really not far in others. I am gifted in certain areas that I can do pretty much effortlessly, and other areas miserable in them and exhausted while I do. That's true of you, that's true of me, it's true of all of us. So I just think that would be a helpful place for us to end, is to say we start the book with, what is this idea of what does a whelmed life look like, living at your capacity? And we continue to talk about that throughout the book. Because if you get one thing from this book, it's just that we're not meant to live underwhelmed, to underlive our lives, under risk, and not go for it. We have one life to live. But if that one life is always overexerting, and that heaviness that comes from trying to live a life that's not ours, not somebody else's, and frankly, we're not invited into, we're going to be overwhelmed. And that is pre-burnout, friends. So if you're listening to this, you're watching this on YouTube, and you're going, that's me. I'm overwhelmed. My simple invitation is, please pick up this book. Invest in yourself for a burrito and a half at Chipotle, and say, how could I clarify things of where I'm at? And that's what I had to do after my fetal ball moment, was like, what is happening? What am I losing? What's going on? Where am I right now? Because this is not where I want to be. And I am going to continue to shape the future. And friends, that's an invitation to this book, is to find clarity. Because when clarity goes up, overwhelm goes down.
A whelmed life is a good life.
It is.
A whelmed life is a full life.
I get to the end of it, shout out to my right side up journal. I'm looking at it here. Each day I say, I have enough time and energy to do what today is asking of me. That's it. Not what tomorrow, not what next week. And whenever I try to overplan the future, I do it because I'm anxious, and I'm anxious when I do it. I'm overwhelmed when I do it, and I do it when I'm overwhelmed. As opposed to go, all I need to do is be present here today, in this moment, in this podcast interview, in this meeting, in this time with my kids, and to say, what if we could be present in this moment? That's what I want. And I believe that's what you want. None of us are saying the good life for me is living in anxiety, living in overwhelm, living in stress, or living in boredom. It's to take on big things. And friends, to do that, we're going to have to rest well.
Alan, this was fun. Guys, if you're watching this on YouTube, listening on iTunes, we're going to leave you, and we hope you guys enjoy this excerpt from part 2 of AntiBurnout, A Lighter Way to Live and Lead in a Heavy World. Enjoy, and we'll see you right back here next week on another episode of Stay Forth Leadership Podcast.
The obstacle, overwhelm. The opportunity, clarity. When clarity goes up, overwhelm goes down. You're carrying way more than you think. I said this to Beth during a coaching session. If it wasn't enough to be directing a nonprofit that empowers vulnerable women and children in Africa, she was also running a family that required constant attention. I felt the weight of what she was carrying in her life and leadership through my computer screen. I said the same thing to Stephen. He'd taken hits in every area of his life, including his health, while running an organization and showing up well for his family. I told John the same thing as he was trying to help his company evolve from a family-run joint into a fast-growing, sustainable organization while caring for his team and creating steep goals. Sometimes life is a lot. It can hit us hard with no warning, Changes in our family, company, stage of life, team, or health can bury us. Sometimes it feels like we're hiking up a muddy hill, barefoot, in the pouring rain. 1 step forward, 3 steps back. The weight of decisions, change, responsibilities, and expectations can make us feel like we're going to crumble under the weight. Sometimes Atlas needs a shoulder massage. Here are a few important things to realize about overwhelm. Overwhelm is part of life and leadership, but we cannot stay there. Overwhelm comes for all of us, but everyone responds to it differently. Overwhelm can move us from a feeling into a way of life if we do not take action. Overwhelm, if not addressed, can slide into burnout. Overwhelm can be a helpful sign you're carrying too much. Overwhelm, if addressed wisely, can lead us toward helpful changes. Sometimes what we don't know produces overwhelm. The fear of the gap can be greater than the obstacles we actually face. Brené Brown says, "In the absence of data, we will make up stories." It's human nature. When we don't have the full story, we assume the negative, not the positive. This is why relational connection and practices for building trust are vital to our teams. They build a relational bank of data that reminds us others are for us, not against us. Sometimes we're overwhelmed because we've voluntarily taken on too much. Other times, things were thrust upon us. Often, it's a messy mix of both. Whatever the path that led you to overwhelm, you cannot stay there. Prolonged overwhelm can slide into burnout. If you felt overwhelmed for more than a few days, it's time to attack the lie beneath it. There are 2 lies we tend to believe when we're overwhelmed: give up or grip for certainty. Option 1, give up. This flight response sounds something like, "What's the point? You're buried. There's no way to win or make progress. Quitting is your only option." This will lead you to losing heart, giving up, and surrendering forward movement. Option 2, grip for certainty. This fight response sounds something like, you have to figure everything out, find out every detail, and white-knuckle your life with complete control. But this will lead you toward overexertion and anxiety. The third path, gain clarity. There's a middle path that begins by gaining clarity. The antidote for overwhelm is clarity. Instead of giving up or over-controlling, slow down and ask, what's overwhelming me? Then you can get the struggle out of your head and on paper. Moving from confusion to clarity facilitates the great exchange, where overwhelm decreases and clarity increases. Clarity and overwhelm have an inverse relationship, like a pulley system. If you can gain 5% clarity, the overwhelm decreases at the same rate, producing a 10% gain. Once you have clarity, you can take steps out of overwhelm. Often, with a few steps, the problem untangles itself. In their book, Designing Your Life, Bill Burnett and Dave Evans say, you can't know where you're going until you know where you are. Clarity helps us locate ourselves so we can cut a path through the underbrush of overwhelm toward healthy action. When you're convincing yourself to grip for certainty, I call this over-control, remember that is also a false narrative. Certainty is an illusion, and chasing it leads us further from health. Gaining clarity is possible, but finding certainty is not. We can't predict every detail we need to know. Where's your crystal ball that predicts the future? We don't just need clarity for ourselves, we need to cultivate it for those we lead. A 2018 survey of tech workers revealed the top cause of burnout was poor leadership and unclear direction. Overwhelmed leaders create confusion, not focus. You cannot give what you do not have. If you want to create clarity, you must find it first. When we choose the middle path of gaining clarity, we get ourselves ready for movement. Movement creates energy and momentum and gets us unstuck. When you feel overwhelmed, you can pause, breathe, and walk through this process. Step 1, identify the source of your overwhelm. Clarity questions. What area or areas of my life feel overwhelming? What aspects feel most overwhelming? And why? Step 2, identify the lie you are believing. Clarity question. What lie am I believing amidst my overwhelm? Step 3. Replace the lie with truth. Clarity question. What truth can I replace that lie with? Step 4. Identify the step or steps you will take. Clarity question. What actions can I take toward the area or areas that feel overwhelming? Step 5. Take your next steps. Clarity question. When will I take those steps? And step 6. Find allies to support you. Clarity question. Who can support me in this process? I often walk leaders through this process. At the end of a 90-minute coaching session, the leader on the other side looks like a different person. They've identified where they were stuck and their next steps. Their shoulders perk up and they have a gleam in their eye. I love getting texts and emails later, letting me know they're moving forward. Next time you're ready to give up or feel yourself grabbing for certainty, take a few breaths and remember there's a third way. Too much is at stake, and you'll only leave more issues for yourself and others to clean up later. The obstacle, change. The opportunity, experimentation. Experiments test the future without pressurizing it. I was curled up in a fetal ball under a weighted blanket. It was 5:30 p.m. and I had barely survived the workday. It felt like I had 300 pounds pushing down on my chest. I had never experienced something like this before. What's happening? Is this a panic attack? Something was very wrong. I'd always been energized by work. I looked forward to each day, anticipating the people I would invest in, the problems I would solve, the content I would design, and the new things I would bring to life with my team. Instead, I was scared and exhausted. I desperately wanted to invest my best energy, helping leaders navigate their path through coaching, consulting, and creating content, but I was afraid. Afraid of failing. Afraid of looking like a fool. Afraid of not being able to support my family. I was about to gain a lot and lose a lot simultaneously. That intense season of my fetal ball moment was a tipping point that helped me make my jump into coaching full-time. It was terrible, but it was necessary. We must go through terrifying and painful moments to get to where we're going. They forge who we are and shape who we're becoming. They're like the bear hunt in one of my favorite children's books. We're going on a bear hunt. Can't go over it, can't go under it, just going to have to go through it. I often repeat these words to leaders when they're about to make a big move. Our minds are always trying to invent ways to go over and under the next challenge instead of going through it. Change is always accompanied by turmoil. I've walked closely with leaders through shifts like having their first child, resigning from a job they've outgrown, moving across the country, launching their last child out of the nest, transitioning into the CEO role, selling a company, burying a parent, and navigating midlife. All these changes bring excitement and pain. Above the surface of the change, there's freshness, and below the surface, there is pain. When tectonic plates shift in our heart and mind and future, hot magma is boiling below the surface. We must attend to these hot spots, or they can spew great damage upon us and others. You cannot shape the future without change. Change brings loss, and loss creates fear. You can't go over, around, or under change. You've got to go through it. If you resist change, you will seek to return to a past that no longer exists. Forward-thinking leaders, me included, can think they're immune to the pain of change. We fancy ourselves as good at change and skilled at navigating the future. We escape boredom or the pain of the present moment by escaping to the future. We declare war on the status quo through aggressive goal setting and bold declarations of what we'll accomplish. And we think we can just skip the pain, the loss, and the grief. I've never regretted launching Stay Forward, but it has been more painful than I imagined. I've had to change my mindset and method many times. I only wish I had a coach to walk through the launch season with me. I wish someone would have grabbed me by the shoulders and said, "Alan, you need to grieve everything you're losing so you have the space to hold everything you're gaining." It's been brutal and beautiful. I really wish I could skip this section, but I can't. If you want to influence people toward things that are good, true, and beautiful, you'll have to get comfortable navigating change. Before we can change the world, we must change ourselves. If I'm guiding you on a backpacking trip in the Rockies, I can help you pack the right gear, create shelter, and carry the right food. But I can't carry you up the grueling steps with your lungs burning at high altitude. I hope this section can help you lighten what you're carrying in your leadership pack. Let me take some pressure off. You're not supposed to know everything about what you're doing. If you do, you need a new challenge. Let me go a step further. We're making this up as we go. We may use cute words like adapting, innovating, or pivoting, but we're really learning on the fly. Making it up as you go is part of leading in this fast-paced age. The antidote to change is experimentation. In fact, experiments are how we are going to get the info we need to move forward. Why are experiments helpful? They limit the pressure and increase our curiosity. They open our mind to new possibilities. They give us data to innovate and make future decisions. They free us and our team to make mistakes. They put us in learning mode and heighten our senses. They move us toward the future when we're stuck. They help us stumble on new ideas. Experiments are for learning, not winning. The learning is the win. If you can label a risk an experiment, you can take the pressure off succeeding. Phrases like, let's try this, and see what we can learn, engage our curiosity, and evoke bravery. I watch a lot of leaders load up expectations when launching new things by expecting everything to work. They believe every little piece of the product has to work. They brand the new program, share what the outcomes will be, and guarantee success to investors. They expect the new hire to produce immediate results. When it doesn't turn out that way, it feels like failure instead of learning. I've done this too. I once hosted a book group that bombed. The reason it was painful is because it was my book. I put way too much work into making sure that it worked and would validate my work. It felt personal, like no one showing up to your kid's first birthday party. It should have been an experiment. I could have saved a lot of time and pain.